Hey everybody, I'm Amy from CajunFiberCompany.com and I'm going to show you how to dye yarn today. Alright, now the first thing we need to do is gather up our supplies. Here I have some citric acid, but you can use vinegar, white distilled vinegar. We're going to need our dyes. I'm using acid dyes for this tutorial, but you can use food coloring or a drink mix like Kool-Aid. If you're going to wash your yarn first, you're going to need either some Dawn dish detergent, some original flavor, but this is Centerpol. It's made for dyeing. You're going to need your yarn, of course. Here I have a skein and a comb, and you're going to need containers. A mason jar is about the perfect size for dyeing, which is what I'm using. If you're using citric acid, you're going to need about a cup of water. And also, you're going to need measuring spoons, which I don't have here because my son took off with. So, first thing we're going to do is if your yarn is already in a hank like this, you can dye it just like this, or you can rewind it into a bigger hank so that you can get more dye more evenly throughout the skein. I ended up using a cone, something like this, and I just used my 3-yard twist here and just wound it onto my skein. Now I want to mention tying off your skein. You want to tie it off in about 4 different places. Usually when you get it in a hank like this, it's already tied off. What you're going to do is you're going to take a length of yarn about 10 to 12 inches long, take your yarn, divide it kind of in half like this, and make a figure 8. And then wrap it around a few times and tie it off. And you don't want to tie it too tightly, because if you tie it too tightly, then where you tied that yarn is going to resist the dye, and you're going to have a white spot. And you're going to do this. I can't grab this. You're going to do this in about at least 4 different spots on your hank. Okay, now next what you're going to do is you're going to take a bucket or your clean sink or something, and if you want to wash your yarn, you're going to do it now. You're going to fill up your sink with warm water, a little squirt of Dawn, of Centerpol, and you're just going to let your yarn sit. I don't wash my yarn beforehand. I just soak it in a mixture of water and citric acid, which, as you can see here, I've left it soaked for about an hour, and the yarn is nice and wet. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go and wring this out. I'm gonna do it over my sink, but this is just so you can see. I'm gonna wring it all out, so it's not sopping wet like this. So that it's just damp. It's on the stove. It's been wrung out. And what I'm doing is I put a low fire under it to warm up the yarn. And the yarn is still wet. You want it to stay wet, because if it's not wet and you don't stir it here, it's going to burn. So what we're going to do, we're going to fill up our jars with hot water. I went ahead and already added my dyes. You're going to add about a 1/4 teaspoon of dye to each jar, more or less to suit your taste. If you want pastels, you'd add less. If you want really dark colors, you add a little bit more. And you're just going to mix them up just to make sure they're nice and mixed. Now I use the same stick. I'm not worried about color mixing. And mix. Also, when you're mixing your dyes, you should be sure to wear a particulate mask, because you don't want the dust from acid dyes getting into your lungs. If you're using Kool-Aid or whatnot, you don't have to have it. When your yarn's heated up a bit, you're going to go ahead and just, you're going to take it and just pour it in however you want. And the reason to have the yarn hot is so that the dye can strike very quickly. And if the dye strikes quickly, it's very hot, it'll take the yarn almost immediately. Ooh, these are very hot. Now this is kettle dyeing. There's going to be some color mixing, which is okay, which is kind of what I'm going for. If you're going to use black, like I'm using here, a little bit of black goes a very, very long way. So you don't want to overdo your black. Now you can take gloved hands or your bare hands or your stick even and just kind of make sure to get all the white spots. You don't want to move it too much. If you move it too much, then the colors are going to really mix and you're going to end up with a lot of browns. And not pretty browns, ugly browns. Just want to make sure to get all the white spots on top that I've missed. And that's it. Then we're just going to take it and cover it on a fire just below simmering. And we're going to time it for 20 minutes. And when the 20 minutes is up, we'll come back and take the fire off. Alright, now my timer just went off, so I'm going to go ahead and take off the stove. Now what I did was, I had originally set the timer for 20 minutes, but then I had a peak, and I decided I wanted to let it go another 15 minutes, so for total time was about 35 to 40 minutes. Now this is going to be very hot, so you want to use a pot holder when you're taking the cover off. And you want to make sure don't get in the way, because there's going to be a lot of steam and it can easily burn you. And we're just going to let it cool off until it's cool enough to handle. And here I'm going to let you see inside of it a little bit better. Okay, so now it's cooled off enough to handle. It's still a little warm, but it's still cool. You want to cook it until the water's clear. You see the water is clear right now. So I'm going to dump it into my colander in the sink and rinse it off. And you just rinse it off with about the same temperature of water so you don't felt the yarn. And since the water, the yarn took up all the dye, there's not really that much to rinse out, but it's good to be on the safe side. After it's all rinsed, you're gonna, I have my little bucket here, my little drawer. I'm gonna put a little bit of soap, and this is rinse-free soap. I'm gonna fill it up and just let the yarn sit in it to wash, and then that's it. Okay, so now that the yarn is going to be washed, it's been soaking for about half an hour or so. You can leave it at least that long. You can leave it a little longer whenever you get back to it. It's pretty much when I get back to it. So there are a couple of ways to dry it. What you can do is you can wring it out a little bit. Put it in a mesh bag like this. It's a lingerie bag. You can get it at any big box store. You're going to put your yarn in here. You can put it in the washing machine on the spin cycle only. Don't let it wash. Don't let it rinse. Just only the spin cycle. And you put it in there, and you put it in the spin cycle, and you let it go, and by the time it gets out, it's going to be pretty well wrung out. And you're just going to hang it up to dry somewhere, and it'll be dry within a couple of hours. And the other way that you can wring out your yarn safely so you don't hurt your yarn, felt it, you know, that sort of thing, you can take a bath towel, regular everyday bath towel, wring it out a little bit so you don't drip all over the floor, of course, the yarn. And then you're going to take your towel and about double it up, you know, fold it in half, and then place your yarn inside the towel about right here, and then you're going to roll it up. And after you roll it up, it's going to look something like this. And you can put it on the floor, and you're just going to step on it, and you're going to step on it and step on it until you feel like it's pretty much wrung out, and the towel is pretty wet by now. And then you hang it up to dry that way as well. This way it'll take a little bit longer to dry, but you're less likely to do harm to your yarn from the washing machine. So if you're a little nervous about using the washing machine spin cycle for that, you can do this method instead. It'll just take a little longer to dry off. Okay, well that's it. I hope you enjoyed my video. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you next time.